Entrepreneurship, it's all game. The Big Potato Podcast is yours to claim. From startups to scaling up, we cover it all, so don't mess up. Monday nights, don't miss the show with Kendell and Stuart. Your time to grow, listen up, take notes and learn. The Big Potato Podcast, next gen's turn. It's next gen's turn.
Welcome back, you guys. Welcome back to the Big Potato Podcast. Remember, we empower entrepreneurs for today's and tomorrow's business landscape. It's light-hearted discussion delivering strategic business insights. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining us. Imagine tonight we are at episode number 5. Stuart, episode 5, 5 is a good number.
Number 5. That's the first number I was able to count up to when I was a little boy. So I always tell that number special, but still at the starting point, a lot more to go. A backlog of entrepreneurs and CEOs and influential people to bring on. So it's a long journey ahead still.
Lovely, but remember, one step at a time. While we're on this journey, our entrepreneurs locked in, we thank you guys so much. We appreciate you, everyone locked in who tunes in every single episode. Thank you so much for your support, your feedback, for your shares, for your comments. We love it. And we want to get more of it. So remember to subscribe to our YouTube, the Big Potato Podcast, also on Spotify, so that you don't miss any of our episodes. And also check out all our social media pages on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn at the Big Potato Podcast. So without further ado, last episode, we dealt with entrepreneurship in the fintech industry. It was quite riveting, revealing, eye-opening. Any feedback on that, Stuart?
Well, a lot of people started to subscribe. A lot more people came onto the platform that we have just off of that episode. You know, it appears that a lot of people trying to venture into that industry. You know, fintech, I believe it's Fintech Avenue. They had an event this week. It was successful, so it's a good industry. A lot of people are interested in it, and we see it in the views and the feedback that we got on that last episode. A lot of people tell me also that they enjoy the diversity of the guests. It's not just one industry, two industries. You know, we really try to bring a diverse amount of industries to the table. So everyone keeps asking, you know, who's next? Who's next? So, you know, in that vein, I'm very excited about tonight's episode.
And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We try to span industries across entertainment, creative industries, tech, media, you name it. And tonight, we are going to venture into the orange economy. We're going to venture into the creative industries. And when you talk creative industries, usually, you know, people think about musicians, artists, and people along these lines, people who create literary works. And of course, it would be remiss of me if we leave authors off that list. So for all our writers, our publicists, or authors out there, tonight is an episode for you. And if you're in some other part of the creative industry, you could pick some cues up, some gems up from tonight's episode as well, because we're talking about entrepreneurship in the creative industries. And to do that, we have an expert in the field. We decided that we need to aim for someone who could really delve into this topic and this industry with us. She is an author, a literary publicist, a published writer, a book marketing consultant, currently the president of the Tobago Writers Guild, also a certified digital marketer. She's delved into TV as well. She's a TV creator and host. And she's also the chair of the Caribbean Women in Leadership Tobago chapter. So without further ado, let me welcome our guest tonight, Jewel Greene-George. Mrs. Greene-George, welcome to the Big Potato Podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I feel like, this is the space to be on on an evening when you're just chilling and you're just upscaling what you know about life. You just pick the Big Potato Podcast and you just tap into so much knowledge. So I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Thank you so much for that endorsement. And we have so much to talk about. You're so excited to get on because you said, hey, I don't even want to talk about myself. I have so much to talk about. So we're going to talk about those things. But thanks for being here tonight. And we're going to jump into our first segment on time because we want to get into the meat of the matter later on. So let's get into our first segment one time, which is, by now you guys know, what caught our eye. And this week, in case you're unsure about what caught our eye segment is about, it's just quick insights that could help inspire entrepreneurs based on stories that we saw trending recently. And tonight, I want to talk about an explodingtopics.com article titled 11 Top Publishing Trends 2024 to 2026. This article was published on January 8th of 2024, so it was quite recent. And it actually gave some perspective as to what is happening in the publishing industry internationally. And with having two authors here, because we have Jewel and of course we have Stuart, I thought that this would have been a good article to really talk about tonight, get some perspective on. What caught my eye here is that the publishing industry has been seeing some shifts and some new trends recently due to development in technology internationally. And one of the main trends is the growing demand for audiobooks and ebooks. Now, searches on Audible, which is one audiobook platform, actually increased 306%, trending over the last 15 years. Now, how many industries can you say have seen that sort of growth, or products or even segments? Of course, it peaked in the pandemic for obvious reasons. But since 2012, revenue has continued to increase by at least 15% year on year. It's incredible. So audiobooks and ebooks are said to be untapped opportunities for independent authors. Now, every week I come here, my favorite word for entrepreneurs is opportunity. So is there or are there opportunities, particularly for our local and regional authors, I should say, and writers in the Caribbean to benefit from this trend of audiobooks and ebooks trending and increasing and growing in demand worldwide and globally? Are our authors positioned to benefit from these trends? I mean, most times we should say the traditional sense of a book is a written hard copy, especially for us in the Caribbean. This is what we know. They say that 65% of book consumption is still in terms of that physical copy. So are we prepared to benefit from this trend? Are we ready for it? And actually, there are so many self-publishing tools now. To name one, ACX from Amazon can transform a single book into multiple digital formats for greater reach. So I'll end it there and ask the two authors here, based on what caught my eye this week, what's your perspective? Let's open the floor to Jewel first.
That article really brings up such a treasure trove of opportunities, as far as I can see. It's not just opportunities for authors with audiobooks. right? And we are seeing that uptrend for demand in audiobooks. And of course, COVID really skyrocketed that. But what we are seeing is the other side of it. The audiobook providers, as well as those who are doing the voiceovers for these audiobooks. So one of the things with audiobooks is the options for the voices. And we don't have a lot of Caribbean options, right? A lot of our regional, that regional sound, right? That Trinidadian voice coming over, reading a book. We don't have a lot of that. And that is not only an opportunity for authors to get into audiobooks, which means they can never run out of their book, right? Because it's now a digital version of the book they're selling. But now we have opportunities for even those persons who are in radio, right? Who are in TV, who are doing voiceovers, who are doing advertisements, those persons who, their voice is their money maker. We have persons now having that opportunity to do audiobooks. So when we look at audiobooks, I don't want us to just think of, I could turn my book into an audiobook. That would be fantastic. But think about having a Caribbean voice read your book, right?
The
A
entire
regional
ecosystem.
voice read your book. Yes. And therefore we keep the employment high, even by doing audiobooks, even if they're marketed overseas, right? We keep our employment high in the orange economy by using our local talent to read these audiobooks, right? And I think we can target even this, what we call our local celebrities. I mean, how fantastic it would be for, let us say, Fay-Ann Lyons or Nadia Batson to read to me as I'm going to
Boy, that
sleep,
would be
right?
great.
Yeah,
That would be
I'm
great.
buying the book, right? Sold. You don't even have you don't have to, Bunchy Garland talking to me as I'm going to sleep, a Chromatics voice reading my book. I mean, come on. So, we can target a lot of our local talent to do these audiobooks. So I'm just putting a plug out there. Yes, we're seeing a local rise in demand for audiobooks. And with that demand is a comparable demand in terms of I heard you all mention fintech, right? And you can't purchase an audiobook unless you have a credit card, right? Or some sort of online payment method. So with the rise in audiobook, are the opportunities for even the companies in the Caribbean. We pay as one of those providers in terms of using local payment methods online. We do have those companies now coming forward and making the opportunity for persons to be able to buy stuff online really, really easy. So you don't always have to have a credit card. So
Right.
you can't have ebooks without people buying it, and you can't buy unless you have that online payment method,
Digital
right?
means.
But it's a credit card or a debit credit card. You need to have that. So all of these things kind of tie in together. Yeah.
Oh, Jewel, let me just jump in there real quickly before I bring Stuart in on this, what caught our eye. You entrepreneurs out there, you realize how everything is tied together, right? Jewel brought up the digital payments and the need for that. She brought up the ecosystem around your book. And we're going to get much deeper into these things a lot later on. But I'll just let Stuart share his 2 cents on this, what caught your eye, before he presents his.
Well, I really like the article it shows. And I especially like what Jewel said about it. Because there's the author marketing side and there's the industry development side. So from the author marketing side, audiobooks is a tool you need to have right now. You could actually lose opportunities because you don't have an audiobook. These influencers who you're trying to capture to help market your book, they don't really have time to sit down and read your book. So a good idea is always have the audiobook. They will listen to it on a flight. They will listen to it while they're driving to work, It's easier for them to consume. So on the marketing side is a plus for sure. The author is able to get a rich experience as well for the reader. They're able to immerse themselves in your landscape, the language. And what Jewel said is important, the use of the local voices. Because as the author, you have to maintain the voice. You can't have a story like my story about Heliard, read by someone with a British accent. So you have to maintain your voice, and it creates opportunities for an industry to grow. There's a whole recording side, the vocal talent side. So it's really clusters of development which should create a proper industry.
Well put, Stuart. And thank you, Jewel and Stuart, for your feedback on my What Caught Your Eye. Well, now, Stuart, what caught your eye this week?
Well, it's funny that you brought that article because my own is titled very tightly. Okay, so there's an article that came across my eye from the PR Newswire. It was from the 27th of February, 2024. The name of the article is Changes in Spotify-Owned Findaway Voices Terms of Use Sparks Industry Concern. And this is an article by the Coalition of Concerned Creators. So Spotify, through the platform Findaway Voice, they recently introduced new terms of use for its audiobook product, which is used by authors to publish their audiobooks on major services. It caused significant concern as many attempted to cancel their contracts, and it resulted in a huge social media uproar. So the thing is, the Coalition of Concerned Creators, they are concerned by what they see as Spotify's continuous history of undervaluing creatives. Now, for instance, the new terms, so you would have signed up, submitted your work, been approved, and your audiobook is live, and then they change the terms of use to reflect this. The new terms allow Spotify rights for royalty, worldwide use, and license them to reproduce and distribute with authors waiving all moral and equivalent rights. Just with a change of terms of use. All right, so my point is, you need to be updated on all the legal issues. You need to not just click, I agree. You need to review these terms. You need to create your own platform, your own website, so these things won't really apply to you. You need to also understand the power of a unified group. As an author, one author won't have been able to stand up to that. Jewel is the president of the Tobago Writers Guild. So that unity would be able to stand up to these sort of things and lobby for certain things and prevent certain abuses. So in a nutshell, that really caught my eye because it was sort of outlandish, and the backlash made them reverse course. So there's a lot of good points coming out of that.
No, the thing about that is, Stuart, even in the order that we went tonight in the What Caught Our Eye, the trends are heading in one direction, and it seems as though not only the authors and the other people in the ecosystem we discussed before are ready to capitalize on these trends, but the established giants in the industry are also trying to capitalize on these trends in some unscrupulous ways, it may seem. And I mean, is it something that we need to keep our eyes on in these terms and conditions as independent authors and writers and so on?
What I will say is, the same way they're trying to capitalize, the author trying to capitalize on their own work. So don't deny them their rights. Don't claim rights. Don't just steal my IP. You want to reproduce and distribute worldwide.
Or you consider that, Jewel?
Well, last week, the International Authors Platform, they launched a Caribbean chapter, and I attended the launch. It was virtual, and during that launch, that's when I found out about the Trinidad and Tobago Reproductive Rights Association. And let me just clear it up in case people think we're talking about your reproductive organs. No, we're not talking about that. What we are talking about is the use of authors, persons in the orange economy, the literary arts, the duplication, replication, use of your work without your permission, and even with your permission sometimes, how the fair use of it, right? So it's literally an equivalent of COT. COT would be the copyrights and reproduction rights for music, and this local organization is for books for persons in the literary industry. It's the Trinidad and Tobago Reproductive Rights Association. I'm going to be having conversation with them for us to have some webinars with guild members, with the public, to make people aware that when you write a book, it's no small matter. It's really your intellectual property. And let's just explain what we mean by that. You have sat down and created something from your mind, put it on paper, right? Whether it's music, whether it's a book, whether it's an audiobook, whether you're making a garment. These are things that came from your mind, your imagination, your mental power, and you're going to be using that to create an income and a revenue stream for you. And here comes
Correct.
along someone who decides, oh, well, I didn't have that idea, but well, who cares? I'm just gonna take yours and run with it.
Take
Grabs
advantage.
your book. Yeah, grabs your book, and because you don't even understand your rights as an author, as a literary agent, as somebody who is producing work in the orange economy, because you don't understand your rights, you know it's wrong. But what do I do? How do I get redress? And while COT has been very vocal, I mean, if you have a party, you have to pay COT, right?
Yep.
If you are doing anything that uses literary works, let us say schools, does the Ministry of Education pay for the reproductive rights of the textbooks? Because textbooks are, you photocopy textbooks, right? Teachers photocopy textbooks trying to help students. And there's something called fair use. So if you're not going to use it for commercial purposes and, you're not reproducing the whole book, there's no cost attached to it. But from the minute you are reproducing, let us say you're having a webinar or a seminar and you're reproducing stuff to use there, that's a commercial purpose. Are you paying the author, right, of that work? Are you giving them any kind of revenue, any kind of gratis for their work? And this is some of the things that we are dealing with. People's ability to take your work and reproduce it without your permission and without paying for it. So when we talk about, the coalition of concerned creatives, and they're looking at how Spotify have changed their usage agreements, that's a big thing. Because what Spotify is doing, how can you offer it for free? If you were to buy it from the authors and creators and then want to sell it for free or give it away for free, that's your business. But you're not paying for it, right? And the music industry has come a long way, right? In terms of being able to access masters and being able to have rights to your masters, who owns the masters. And that is very similar to your manuscript. Who has the rights on your manuscript, right? I've had an author who got a publisher to apply for their ISBN number. This author wasn't really au fait with the whole publishing process. Asked the author, the publisher, could you sort this out for me? Yes, the publisher said, and they said, okay, fantastic. Only to realize that the publisher purchased the ISBN number, yes, on their behalf with their money, but put their name on the ISBN number.
Wow.
So now the rights to the book, even though the published author on the book is, Mary Jane, right? But Mary Jane has to go to the publisher for them to take it off of Amazon. Mary Jane has to go back to the publisher to say, listen, I want to do a new book and I don't want my book up there. How can, asking this and treating this publisher to try and get certain things done. So we're talking about, something that is very, very pervasive
Prevalent.
right now in the orange economy and with the literary industry. So this is a big thing. And when you have organizations like perhaps the International Authors Forum and other international bodies, what they're doing, they're like the watchdogs of the industry. And they're making sure that, if something is happening over in Trinidad or something is happening over in Argentina, and you make us think about it, they're going to come in and say, oh, we're going to support you, right? It's not going to be a one man in a corner hollering and bawling. They come in and to help support and shore up your position. And we really need that. There is strength in numbers. People think they could run over one person, correct? But when you have an international body who advocates at the level of the UN, right? It's very hard now for somebody to run over your rights and for it to be okay.
No, Jewel, that is perfectly said. And a lot of what you spoke about there, we are going to discuss in depth a little bit later on. So thanks so much. So that's how we wrap up What Caught Our Eye this week. Brought to you by IBOMAQ. Remember to contact them for all your consulting needs. Whether you're seeking guidance or solutions for your business, we're here to help. Contact us via IBOMAQ868@gmail.com. That's IBOMAQ868@gmail.com. And let's discuss how we can collaborate for your success. And we're back. And we're heading into segment number 2 tonight. Remember, we're dealing with entrepreneurship, the orange economy, as we said. And sometimes, we might say things and we want to make sure we clarify at all times. So the orange economy, let me just give a quick synopsis. That's the creative economy, also known as the orange economy, includes sectors whose goods and services, as you heard before, are based on the creation of intellectual property, such as design, visual arts, cultural heritage, new media, your content creators, software, performing arts, music, literary arts, and of course, publications. And tonight we have our esteemed guest with us to really deep dive and delve into this economy and this industry. And what are the opportunities out there for entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur herself, as a published author herself, Mrs. Jewel Greene-George. And tell us, Jewel, there has to be some sort of story, how you became involved as a writer. How did you get into writing to drive you from then to now as a published author, president of the Tobago Guild of Writers, and everything else that you would have accomplished to this point, being able to produce your own book in terms of how to sell more books fast, strategies to sell more books fast. So tell us about that journey for you.
Well, I want to thank you all for having me on your platform again. I think this is a fantastic place to share knowledge and to gain some knowledge, right? How I started off, I love to write. Since I've been a child, that's all I love to write. That's all I love to do. I love to write. I have an intimate relationship with stationery, paper, pens. Let's start there, right?
You're one of those who had the pencil case.
Yeah, I
Huge
really love
case,
that
right?
whole activity of writing. So at a young age, I've been writing all sorts of things, just loving that feel of the pen and the paper. My earliest memory and joy of writing started when my mother, so in standard 1, that's when they transition you from that pencil, right? You transition to the pen. So I was feeling all special. August vacation came and mom bought my sister and I. She bought us this penmanship book and your bottle of ink and your pen and stuff. So it started there. And obviously, if you're writing, you want to write something. So we started to write stories. It just graduated from there when I was in standard 5. My best friend, when you're in primary school, everybody has a best friend. My best friend and I, we wrote this book. She would take the notebook home and she'd write some of the story and she'd bring it back for me and I'd go home and write another part of the story. And so we'd go back and forth writing a mystery, like if we were the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew, because that's what we lived on at that time.
Hardy Boys.
Yeah, I love a good mystery, Poirot and Agatha Christie. Now we have a lot of those stories locally to depend on and to fall back on instead of, those foreign stories. And nothing is wrong with the foreign stories, but, had I had that as a child growing up, I'm sure it would have colored my world a lot differently as well. But that's just to say, it's always been in my blood, writing. And now that we're in the digital age, we're heading into writing on digital devices, right? And I've transitioned simply from writing my own little stories into becoming an author of a book that I am in the works of publishing. So it's now for beta readers. And what's a beta reader? A beta readers are those persons who are going to take your book and really read it and say, I don't like the layout of your book. I think you could make some changes, right? Oh, I love what you did in the first part, and then you go make some changes. So right now, my book is in the experimental phase with the beta readers. I'm giving it away for free, and I'll share the link with you all so that persons could just figure out how to market books on their own, right? Because we know that self-publishing really puts authors in that space to kind of do their own thing, right? It's on, everything is on you. But not to digress, I elevated from just simple writing, and I moved to Tobago because I lived in Barbados for about 10 years. I went to school in Barbados at UWI, and
Right.
after being there for 10 years, I had such a fantastic time. Barbados is my second home. I'll go back tomorrow. And I came home after a while. It was just time. I came home and I ended up moving to Tobago. And I found the Writers Guild, and I was like, what? There's a space for people who write to meet.
Right.
There's a group. What?
You found
That's
your tribe.
perfect. Yeah, I felt like, somebody was calling my name, Kismet. The stars were aligned. So I call them quickly. I was like, I want to get involved. How do I get involved? So I started to go to meetings and so on. And I've never looked back. It was just from a simple member attending from time to time, right? I wasn't going all the time at first. And I found it so interesting and amazing, the work that the founders of the Tobago Writers Guild had put in to get the organization to that point where I could now join, and I've been here for over 5 years, and I'm now the president of the guild. I started small,
Congrats.
just learning what the guild was about, and now I'm here. But I also have my own
Congratulations on
company,
that.
so I know we'll talk about that. I don't want to monopolize your conversation, but it's
No.
such a circular moment for me.
To tell you the truth, we actually want
Yeah.
you to get into a little bit of your entrepreneurial side in terms of your companies and so on. Tell us a little bit about, actually, let's start with your book strategies. How to sell more books fast. Strategies to sell more books fast. What inspired
Well-
that book along this journey that you explained to us? At which point you thought, did you have a book to sell and then you needed to, you learned some lessons along the way and you wanted to expound these and share these with other people as well? How did it come about?
Well, let me tell you. So in 2016, December, I was in Barbados working as controller of a gold mining, precious metal mining company called Sandstorm Gold. And I was there doing the accounts and running the company at that time. And things changed in the company, and I didn't feel like that was where I was supposed to be anymore. I handed in my resignation December 2016 and spent 2017 trying to figure out what I would do with myself, right? And as I handed in my resignation, I went home. I spent Christmas with my friends and those who had become my family in Barbados. I decided, what? I was helping a lot of NGOs at that time, and some of my friends who have NGOs and other work. I was at that time the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Barbados, TTAB, and a lot of persons I was helping with their NGOs and their social media. So I decided I would go into that. I would start a company that would help people, businesses, entrepreneurs, small businesses, with their social media marketing. And I sat down, I wrote down, how the business was going to be, what it was going to be called. In that time in my mind, it was going to be called Caribbean Digital Marketing Services, one long name, Listen,
Like a true writer.
Yeah, and I started the Facebook page, I started Instagram account, I started Twitter account, and within an hour or two friends called me up and they say, I seen something on Facebook. That's you? I was like, yeah. I was like, thank God, right? I am having such a hard time working out my social media for my business. So I went and I met with them, I sat with them, we came up with a plan for the social media, and that's how the business started. Like literally, it was so immediate, I couldn't even believe it. I got clients upon clients upon clients in Barbados. One even paid for his friend who had a small business to get my services because he said, I know he's not going to do it on his own because he doesn't understand the value of having somebody work on your social media for you, right? Especially when you don't know what you're doing. A lot of people just post on social media, I'm eating a sandwich, I'm walking down the road, and people think that that's what social media is about, but there's so much behind it, right?
Strategy behind it, right?
Yeah, and a lot of small businesses, either they don't have the time to get into it, right? They may be knowledgeable, but they just don't have the time, they don't have the bandwidth, and some of them don't even understand it to that extent, so they need help. And I was so grateful that at that juncture, I just met people who needed that service and I was able to do it. And that's how I spent my 2017. And then I moved to Tobago. I moved back home, and from then it just transitioned. So when I joined the guild and I started to speak to people because they wanted me to help them with the social media, I realized what they really needed was book marketing, right? And not just, the social media services that I was doing for small businesses, right? Small and medium-sized entities and NGOs. They needed some targeted marketing for their books, for the literary products, and they needed also literary publicity services. So I kind of transitioned over time. I was like, no, this social media, I'm into it. I'm a digital marketer. I'm certified. I know my thing. And people kept coming to me, I need help. Could I just talk to you, bend your ear a minute? And I'll be like, yeah, spend 3 hours on a call talking to people about what you could do with your book marketing. And I was like, Jewel, you're not making sense, right? You're spending time doing something that people want to pay you for, but you keep saying, that's not what that's not what the company's about. Your company's about what people need, right?
Yes.
It's not about...
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. So, I said, what are you doing, right? You're being stubborn and stop the foolishness. So I said, okay, they need book marketing services. I understand what's happening. I can do this. And the literary publicity of it all, it's something that I found out naturally good at. A friend of mine in Barbados once was telling me, I want you to help me do some marketing and do this. And I was like, I don't know, that's not my thing. He's like, that is your thing, that you don't even know. It's crazy. You need to get into this. And I was like, I don't know. So when I came to Tobago and I started it, I say, oh gosh, I say he would laugh me under the table now if he also. Right? Laugh me to shame. Because, a few years ago, I was like, I don't know. And look at me now. So it just that authors kept coming to me. They were having some issues because they're self-published. When you are going the traditional publishing route, you have a machine behind you. But when you're a self-published author, you're it, right? You're the publisher, you're the editor, you're the cover design, because you have to say what you want. Even if you get somebody to help you with those things, you still have to get somebody, you still have to be the final say, give the approval. So you are doing all of this on your own. And then when you finish the book and you say, hooray for Jesus, as they used to say a long time, I finish, and you feel so proud of yourself, you want to do your book launch, because that's the next thing we're going to talk about that. And you realize, wait, I still have work to do? So this is not it? No, literally, it's not it.
The work just got started, right?
you finish one phase and now we're into the second phase, and this phase is going to last you the rest of the lifetime of your book, right? So we now have to start doing the work, and it's now some of them is get discouraged because they're like, I did so much to get here and publish my book. I don't know if I'm able, I'm tired, I just want to do a book launch and celebrate, and people buy my book because it's that awesome. And it's like, it's not going to be that easy. Just, you don't just put out a book and everybody's, here's how wonderful your book is, and they come buy it. That's not how it is, right? Just like whether it's a fiction, non-fiction, whether it's prose or poetry, you still have to, just like a business, you still have to solve a problem for the people. And I was telling an author that, and I was like, no, but I write fiction. I was like, yes, but you're solving the problem of taking people out of the world that they're living in with your fiction.
Correct.
Right? Your story is taking them on a journey. And if your story isn't going to do that for them, if your book cover isn't going to do that for them, why would they want to buy a book? And that's what we have to talk about with authors. So even the marketing of the book starts way before the book is even finished publishing, right? Before you get to that final stage of publishing. So that's how I got here, through the interactions with the different authors. And I realized, we are an industry, a machine of self-publishers in the Caribbean. When you look at overseas, they have a lot of literary agents and literary publicists, and they have a machinery. We don't have a lot of access to that. If you were to look and search for literary agents, who are the person? Who is a literary agent? A literary agent is who is going to take your book and shop it across to all the publishers. You want this book, you want this book, you want this book. Send it to 5 publishers, and the publishers, because a lot of the traditional publishers, they don't take manuscript from authors, huh?
They don't take any unsolicited.
No, they don't. They don't take manuscripts from authors, straight from an author's hand to theirs. They take manuscripts from agents. So a lot of times, if you don't know that, you're going to spend your time sending around your manuscript and they're not even going to open it. And these are, when I say traditionally published, these are the ones who, the ones who took over J.K. Rowling and the Stephen Kings. We're not talking about the self-assisted. We're talking about true traditional publishers, right? The Penguin. We're talking about the Schuster and House. We're talking about those publishers. They are not going to be looking at submissions from authors. So if they don't come in from labeled or with that cover from an established publisher or established agent, they're just going to take your thing and rest it in the bin. They don't want to do the work of filtering whether they think your book is sense or nonsense, or whether you may not have fully edited the book, or maybe you didn't finish the book properly, or it just, the story didn't gel, but you wanted to publish it anyway and you went and you did it. They're not going to do that. So if you are in the Caribbean and you want to go the traditional publishing route, meaning you want someone to pay you to publish your book rather than you pay a company to publish your book, right? And it might sound like semantics, but really you hand your book over to an agent, they shop it around, and they now may start a bidding war if your manuscript is that good. They say, we have to have this. Go ahead.
Let me just jump in a bit there, because we delving into a number of the topics that we want to really get deeper into, and I don't want us just to gloss over them because these are fantastic points. So you showed the vision, you showed who you understood who was your target audience, and you understood the opportunity and what was needed, and that is what really built you into an entrepreneur and built some of your businesses and even helped you to write your book. And on that note, I want to swing it to Stuart, because I know he has a very pertinent question to follow up on that.
Well,
sure.
I love what you were listening. I really love what you were listening. You see, what she is showing to the audience is that every author is an entrepreneur. And you have to think like an entrepreneur. It's not have an idea, you write it down, and it will just be sold magically. You have to put together your author team. And Jewel spoke on that a little while ago in terms of the beta readers. So my question was, in terms of early phase, and late phase. Who are some of the people that you should bring into your team, your author team?
Right. So let me just backtrack a little bit. So your beta readers are those who are going to, they're not just editors. They are, persons in your target market, because you know what you're writing for. When I say in your target market, if you've written a children's book, your beta readers can't be adults. They have to be children. So your beta readers are persons in that target market who are going to read your book and give you honest feedback. I don't like the font, it's too small. The book boring. Why is it boring? So it's literally like a focus group that you're running. Then you have what we call an ARC program. So at the beginning of the project, even before you get to the end where you're saying, I've published a book, you want the beta readers to have the book in hand, right? Then you make your changes and you do all of these things to make sure it's ready for publication. And then you have an ARC program where you will have persons to do reviews, right? We'll get into that later. But what we're talking about in terms of the publishing process, whether you're in the early stages, the middle stages, or what we call, the not the late, but you're at the end of that publishing process and now heading into marketing. By the way, they overlap quite a bit, right?
Yes, they do.
What we're looking at is a question first and foremost. Do I want to be a self-published author, or do I want to be a traditionally published author? A lot of persons don't even know that that's an option. Right? Coming from the Caribbean, where we see everybody self-publishing, we forget that that's an option. Please ask yourself these questions very, very early. Do I want to pay for my book to be published, or do I want somebody to pay me to publish my book? Because it's quite a different process. Now, if you understand where you want to go with that process, you have to approach writing quite differently. And perhaps even where you go for the help, you have to approach it differently. Now, I had a conversation with Lady Montano. She published a book called King of Soca, and her book is winning awards and it's doing so well. But when she went to get the book traditionally published, they wanted to change this and take out that, and it mustn't have this on the cover, and we don't like the colors. And she said, she said to me, I said, whoops, hold up. I am publishing my book myself because I want it just how I want it. You see, just what I have here is just so it going to be, right? So you have to,
vision, right?
That's a decision you have to make. You really have to figure out who you're going to be as a published author, whether you're going to pay somebody and therefore you have the say and retain all your rights, or whether you're going to be paid, in which case you don't own the rights to your book. So let us, for instance, look at J.K. Rowling, and that's one of our authors in this modern times, who has been big with Harry Potter books. But we have quite a number of authors that are coming out and doing well. Those authors now who are getting paid, they're getting paid. Why are they getting paid? They're getting paid to give up rights. So they get a berriffle of money because you are never going to be able to say what we do with your book again, right? How we market your book cover, different editions, that's what you're getting the millions of dollars for. And fingers and toes crossed, we all get millions of dollars for our books if we go traditionally published. But that's what you're getting paid for. And the inverse of that is where you pay. So when you pay to publish a book, you retain all your rights, or are supposed to, right? Remember, we talked about the author whose publisher applied for her ISBN number as himself. And therefore she lost the rights. So, be careful if you're going to say, I'm going the self-publishing route and lose the rights to your book anyway.
Yep.
Right? Be very
Correct.
careful, because if, and I don't like telling people, you have to figure it out yourself all before you get into it, because it's kind of telling people you have to learn to be able to fix a car yourself before you could take it to a mechanic, right? Because you're afraid. you're afraid the mechanic is going to cheat you, so you have to know everything about a car. You don't have to know everything about the publishing process, but there are just some key things that you want to understand. Your ISBN number, what does that mean? If somebody applies for it for you, who owns the book? If you're not the one whose name is attached to that ISBN number, right? Who is the target market? Not just age group, because I ask a lot of authors, who is the target market? And, when I'm doing that first client interview, and they said, well, children. I said, okay, well, what age group? And then some of them know, some of them don't know. And I said, well, just like you're in primary school and they are, first year to standard 5, right? Or you're in the US system where they're grades, you need to know, how old this child is and the level of words you may put in your book. So even that you have to know from the beginning, because, you want to make sure your target market wants your book. Right? And a lot of parents buy books. Children don't buy books. Yes.
You're hitting on so many pertinent points that I really don't want to just go over them too much.
Not a problem.
In terms of the actual team, as Stuart mentioned, we're talking here, you made mention of publishers, you made mention of your beta readers, you made mention of editors, you even made mention of perhaps people that you could use as intermediaries, as the literary agents. Is there anybody else, just to wrap up this point on the team itself before we go into something else, is there anybody else that authors should consider? Because entrepreneurs have to put together a team around them, especially with the skills that they may lack in order for their products and services to be successful. So is there anybody else that we're missing that we should put on our team as authors?
There's something called a street team, right? We don't do a lot of that here in the Caribbean, but that is your fan base for your book. And what we are missing in our team, we know about the cover, we know about the editing, we know we must have a publisher, we know I have to pay for an ISBN number, we know all of these things. But what we don't put a lot of work into is getting reviews, right?
Okay.
And that's what your street team will do. Your street team is your fan club for the book. Now, how am I going to find a street team or a fan club? I mean, geez, what do I do? Go out in the street and say, who liked my book? There's a process for it. But you need to create an ARC program. That's where the street team kind of comes in, right? Where you give persons your book, your completed, finished book, for them to give you honest reviews, whether it's on Amazon. And we know on Amazon you'd have to purchase the book or the author. Well, that's a little tricky. Let's not get into that. But the book has to be purchased for you to be able to get that review on Amazon. But there's also Goodreads, right? And Goodreads doesn't need a purchase for you to be able to leave a review. So I would say if an author is building a team, don't forget that part of the team that is going to review your book and let people know what they thought of it, right? Why did you like the book? What did you like? What you didn't like about the book? It's not every book people want to, read from cover to cover and not find a fault. Sometimes you read a book and you're like, I don't know why you kill off this character. That was my favorite character and you kill off my character. Sometimes
like the second page, right?
Yeah, people come at you, right? They find you and they write you, and that's when you know you have a good book, right? When they come for you, when the people who are reading your book are so engrossed in what you're doing as an author in the story of woven, they themselves come to you and say, why you didn't, let them get married, these two characters. I was, hoping they'd get married, or I find she should have leave that stupid man, or that woman too stupid. He should, this, when they get into it. I remember my mom told me a story. I don't know if you all may remember this. There was a kind of soap opera at night, something called Dallas. And she was telling me the story about, there was this character called JR. He loved to be hated. He was the antagonist. And he said he was grocery shopping one day, and this little old lady walked up to him and she said, I know you, it is a Western accent, I know you played JR on this show Dallas. And he was like so proud, right? He was like, yeah, that's me. And she hit him wonk off. Right? She said, I don't like how you speak to this so and so character on the show, right? You need to be nice to her. And she walked off because she was so happy she saw him and give him a piece of her mind. And, that's when he knew he was doing a good job. He had done such a good job weaving a story as the character of JR that he was being met on the street. People couldn't decipher who JR was and who he himself personally was. There was no divide. He was that person. And that's what you want when you're writing a good book. So I would say, get your ARC program, get your reviewers, work on getting reviews, because even for Amazon, it is a space where people don't want to have to buy a book to figure out if it's good, right?
Yeah.
So these are things what we're looking at in terms of, your reviewers. You don't need a review for Nike sneakers, right? People tell you, oh yes, those are durable shoes. You don't need a review
They
for
defend the
Reebok if you're
brand.
into sports. And that's what you want for your book. You want people to say, oh yeah, I heard about this book. People really like it, right? Or I heard about this book. There's some little twist in the book. Don't give me any spoilers. I'm gonna get it and now head into the store to get my copy. I don't want to hear nothing. You want that kind of reaction. So I would say invest in your reviews.
And that's fantastic feedback and great insight, Jewel. So you guys heard it yourself. Build your street team, build your arc. And on that note, we're going to switch gears a bit.
Well, I again think this episode is going to be one filled with gems because there's so much information in each sentence. What I want to focus on is how important is storytelling in your business, in your social media management, even with the Tobago Writers Guild. How do you've been doing stories since you're in primary school, as I said. Is that element of creativity helpful?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think one of the hallmarks of a good writer, because not all writers are published authors, right? Some of us become journalists. Some do, we do stories, we read the news, we become research writers. But one of the hallmarks of a good writer is the ability to read something or see something or even hear something and be able to turn that into such an interesting tale, right? Being able to understand what a person might find interesting in this story, right? And that's one of the things that you have to be able to do to even sell your product. We're not just talking about authors. If you were selling hair products, you have to be able to tell a convincing story. And we're not trying to bamboozle anybody, right? The story is true and you get good reviews and people like your products and they work. But you have to be able to tell the story so that people get it, right? We know that there are products out there and they tell such a good story until they buy the products and you realize they're no good. But that's what brings people in. If they don't know about your product in terms of what it can do, right? The problem it will solve for them. What would make them go spend the money to buy a product? What would make them even go look for your book, right? You have to differentiate yourself in the market, and authors have to be able to do that. So I always tell people, listen, we have kind of a conundrum in this literary arts industry. We have persons who write amazing stories and they're introverts. They don't want anybody to know them, right? They want to sell behind a cloth, right? They want to be behind the curtain and stick their hand out and everybody buy the book. It doesn't work like that. So you have to be able to not just show yourself, there's a, we can decide how much we're going to show. But in terms of storytelling, you have to be able to pull things out of your story that people want to identify with, that people find interesting. That's kind of like an Easter egg, what they call, that Easter egg. You read certain things and you're like, oh, you read Harry Potter and they talked about, they were wearing some particular color or some, and you're like, if your brain is the way my brain is, you don't figure, oh, that coming back, right? That coming back somewhere in his story, and you're looking forward to that Easter egg coming back in his story in some little shape or form, right? So you have to be able to weave these stories that, one, are unpredictable. They didn't see it coming, or they thought they saw it coming, and then when they look, it came something else, right? A plot twist. You have to be
Right.
able to tell a story, keep people's interest, and be true to the story you're telling, right? Some authors are great at fiction, but if you read these stories, I feel a little disconnect in this story. It doesn't feel really real. Something is missing from it. The characters might be two-dimensional. You have to make them real. They have to be, when people read a book, they must feel like they could touch this person. This person is somebody I know. After I read
And
this, that's my best friend in my mind.
That is exactly a Jewel. In terms of to wrap up that point on storytelling, fantastic feedback and insights. I mean, Jewel is just bringing it tonight. I mean, I want to thank her so much for providing the time. And before we go to the break, authors, just like entrepreneurs, you guys heard it. There must be differentiation. So we can't have the same thing over and over. You heard it there from Jewel herself. And I mean, she also touched on personal branding and how that is leveraged in order to be a successful author, a successful entrepreneur on the whole, and ready to get your product moving. In this case, we're talking about your literary works, your books, etc., and your articles or whatever they might be. So people, take note. And on that note, we take a short break. On the Go TT, expanding convenience. Virtual shopping mall available on iOS and Android. Download and shop for electronics, books, hardware items, and much more. Yes, folks, we're talking entrepreneurship in the creative industry. The orange economy. All right, so all you writers, I'm sure by now you're super inspired. All you creatives out there, I'm sure you're super inspired because Jewel Greene-George, she's on tonight and she's bringing the heat. She's bringing the gems. She's bringing the fire on the Big Potato podcast. Yours truly, Kendell. I'm here. Stuart is here as well. We're inside our final segment tonight. And I wanted to talk a little bit, Jewel, about your involvement in the Caribbean Women in Leadership. And really and truly, generally, what does it take to be a successful woman in this industry? We're talking the orange economy. We're talking about creatives. We're talking about writing in particular. You are very successful and you continue to strive. So what are some of the key insights you could share for other women seeking growth or entering this industry?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. We're heading into International Women's Day, and the UN theme for International Women's Day for 2024 is Invest in Women, right? Accelerate progress. And we're looking at, Caribbean Women in Leadership is a regional organization, just putting in a plug for my ladies. We're a regional organization. We have 9 chapters so far, and we're growing still. And we focus on what we call sustainable goal number 5, which is gender equality, but with a very specific and unique perspective. We're looking at the leadership spaces, right? There's something called the Beijing Convention, and, authorities across the world met and talked about what's happening with women in leadership in terms of being in politics, being in spaces to make decisions, to make policies, to make laws. And we know that the political arena is where we get to do that a lot. And they realized that there was less than 33% of women in any of these spaces anywhere in the world. And that's where we came up to say, well, listen, we have to do better. We have a population, a whole portion of this population. It's more than 50%. How can they only be represented in spaces of leadership and in politics? Less than 33%. So they had set that goal, and we're looking in Trinidad and Tobago. We've met that goal of 33%. It's fluctuating since COVID, but we're looking to make sure we meet that target and exceed that target. So that's what the Caribbean Women in Leadership is really focused on. we're looking at gender equality, but through the lens of leadership spaces for women. And you
This is
asked,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And you asked about, how do women win in these spaces? How do we become successful? What would be that? What would be the recipe? And there's no real recipe or method except for passion. I just want to put that out there. Yes, you have to have a dream. You have to have clarity of that dream. And nothing helps clarify a dream than writing a business proposal, right? The how, the where, the what, and the who of it all. But we all know as entrepreneurs, this is not a sport for the faint of heart. You
Not
have
at all.
to, this is, you have skin in this game. When they talk about people on the motorbikes and they fall off, they get white men. This is what entrepreneurs go through every single day, right? We always trying to recover from something, whether it's the financial the economy going down with COVID, closing your business. You have to figure out how you're going to pivot, how you're going to collect your revenue, who is going to pay you now for your services now that you're closed. We have to keep thinking about that, and I am so grateful to be in a space where we're not looking to take anything from the other gender. What we're looking for is equity. When we talk about equality, people may not really understand what we're talking about, and I'll give a quick example. When we talk about equality, that means if we had a pack of biscuits and the pack of biscuits had 12 in it, there are 3 of us here, everybody have to get 4. But when we talk about equity, what we're now considering is who is more hungry in here.
Right.
Kendell, did you eat lunch? Did you eat anything for the last few hours? I'll say, I ate already. I'll just take 2 biscuits. I don't need 4. Right? Stuart, you ate, and you'll be like, no, I haven't eaten for the whole day. Well, you'll get the lion portion of it. That's when we start to talk about equity and not equality. Equality means everybody has to get the same amount. But when we start to talk about equity, we start to talk about who needs more because they're in a situation, right? What's happening with each individual or each group now to make sure that you get to have that equal opportunity as somebody else. So if we were to give everybody 4 biscuits and Kendell, you had not had lunch, what would 4 biscuits do for you? You'd be like, I need more. What would 4 biscuits do for you? Nothing. You'd still be hungry and hangry, as they say, right? You still want to eat somebody
and disgruntled.
Yeah, you're still upset. So, we have to start to talk about equity, equality in terms of equity. And when we get to that equal space, then we can have a real conversation about equality. And sometimes we're talking about business entrepreneurship. If you are seeing, there are companies who may not value women, and we know that there's a financial gender gap. They may not value women's work. There is a pay gap, a gender pay gap, where women are not being paid the equivalent that they're paying their male compatriots or colleagues in the field, similarly employed, similarly experienced, and because you're a woman, you're not getting that same equity. And this is something that even comes up as an author. If you were to be traditionally published, are you going to get your worth from a publisher paying you for your intellectual property in the orange economy as an author? Because you're a woman, you have to ensure that there's standards in the industry and that you are being paid what is comparable for somebody who has written a story like yours. And I know this creative industry
Across
is
the board.
it's so subjective, right? It's not a mathematical formula that you can use, because what they're paying you for is what they anticipate will be demand for your manuscript, right? And they may think people want your manuscript, but do they really know, right?
Yeah.
So even that, they're paying for, it's a kind of a gamble. But what I'm putting to you is that women who are writers, who are in the publishing industry, who are wanting to become published writers, I would say join a group of other women, join a group of other authors, because you need to start having some very honest and transparent conversations about what is being paid in the market, what is fair for your work, what are other people collecting for their work, right? That doesn't mean that you have to take what they're getting, but you need to understand what's happening in the market, what's happening in the publishing trades, right? And if you don't know that, you may be one of those persons. Maybe you will get through, go for luck and see for luck, right? You may get through and do well, but you may also be one of those persons who you don't understand the process, you don't understand anything, you're here like a lone wolf by yourself, and they can scam you. So I would say for a woman to be successful right now, because we haven't gotten to a place of equality, right? We're still trying to get equity.
And I thank you for that feedback.
In themes, yeah.
I thank you for that feedback, Jewel. Very pertinent points, very pertinent issues that we all need to consider, especially when it comes to the gender bias and the gender issues that we tend to sometimes overlook, some of us, that we need to ensure, as Jewel said, that the equity is there for all. And you touched on something there that I also wanted to segue into, which is the industry. And looking at the industry, looking at what is being paid, and looking at trends and these things. And I mean, not only for women, but for authors in general, entrepreneurs, as we said. What are some of the trends in the industry right now that you think Caribbean writers in particular, from your perspective, are currently overlooking as we get ready to wrap up in a short?
That's such a good question. I think some of the trends they are overlooking would be one of the things that you pointed out and what caught your eye, right? That demand that's going up for ebooks and for audiobooks. A lot of times when we look at the publishing industry and we look at the process of publishing, it's not cheap. It's expensive, and it can get pretty up there when we're talking about how much you're going to spend. Ebooks and even audiobooks, they are a lot cheaper to produce, and therefore, as Caribbean people who may not have access to a lot of options to publish quality work at a lower price, ebooks is the perfect option for us, because we don't even have to try to print that hard copy book, right? And you'll never run out of books if you use that ebook, if you go the way of ebooks. So I would say we should focus a lot more on the digital aspect of storytelling, the digital aspect of sharing books, selling books, and of entrepreneurship. If COVID taught us nothing, it taught us that, we cannot keep depending on, as Caribbean people, on this face-to-face. We are very tactile people. We love to hug and touch, and, you can't talk to a Caribbean person and they bust out laughing and they do hit you, right? They're going to touch your lash, something. And that's how we like to operate. We like to come in your store, walk through you. But we are moving away from that in terms of the options. And I would say we need to understand the power that the digital space is offering us, the freedom it's offering us as Caribbean authors and writers.
Okay, great. I have one question again, and it is actually tied to the question you answered previously when you spoke about the women's rights. How could activist authors drive change?
Yeah, so I love that authors themselves can be their own advocates, right? And why do I say that? Because you alone know the value of your work sometimes, right? We always talk about, who is going to see the value in your work if you don't see it? So you're the best person to advocate for yourself as an author, as a writer, for your value. This is not, this is not a mathematical equation, right? If you're working in the public sector, the Service Commission has categories that, if you're a teacher 1, you get this, and if you're a public servant, 3, you get that. But when you're an author, where do we go to see what kind of revenues we should be paid? Where do we go to see that, right? So we have to advocate for ourselves first, because it may be in a small space. It may be on a one-on-one in terms of somebody reproducing your work, wanting to use your work, and what do you what do you tell them you want to get paid for that work? But it may be on a larger scale that you're going to a publisher, and you may now be able to bring in the bigger dog in the fight, right? What we would call, the writers' unions and all of that. And that's what the Tobago Writers Guild is hoping and seeking to do when we're heading into the areas of reproductive rights, right? Reproduction rights of your work. We want to be able to speak to those agencies, explain what's going on, and even look at crafting national policies and drafts for national policies, public consultation with other writers and authors about what do you need? What do you need from the authorities? Where should they be spending your tax dollars to support you in the orange economy, in the literary industry? Yeah?
Perfectly said, Jewel. And I think that is exactly the question we want to end with tonight. In terms of you being an author, a woman, of course, and an entrepreneur, what are some of the challenges and the opportunities right now in the orange economy as we want to wrap up this conversation? And I think that's the perfect point to wrap up on tonight.
Some of the challenges, but before I say that and forget about my sisters who are going to be in Woodford Square on Friday, and I'm going to be part of the THA debate. We're debating Invest in Women in the THA legislature, which is the Tobago House of Assembly legislature. It is the older of the two legislature systems in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm going to be debating in a house with a majority. I'm going to be chief sec for the day, right? Imagine.
What,
and
Papa?
We're going to be, we're going to be debating. Don't congratulate me yet. Let's wait and see what I do.
Some,
right?
Some flight prices for us for the weekend or something.
Use
the power wisely.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. But we're going to be debating the topic of Invest in Women for and against in the Tobago House of Assembly. And that's on Friday from 10. So if you're in Tobago, I'm inviting you to come sit as what they call a stranger in the gallery and listen to the discussions and conversations. And if you're in Trinidad, I'm inviting you down to Woodford Square from 10 o'clock. We're having a rally and fair. Different NGOs will be in Woodford Square. Caribbean Women in Leadership will be there. We have a booth and we'll be sharing information. And then from midday, there is a march through Port of Spain, and the route is going to be published. You can find it on our Caribbean Women in Leadership, any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook. And we just inviting you to come out there. But what are some of the challenges? Let me tell you, some of the challenges I have been facing, one as an entrepreneur, is that what I'm doing not just has value, but it's actually something that is employable, right? Why do you need a literary publicist? Why do you need a book marketer? Can't you just go down to the bookstore and put your book in there? Can't you yourself just go online and sell your book? And the answer to that is yes, you can. But do you have the wherewithal to do it? You may not have the time if you know, and if you don't know, you may not be able to get all of these things done. I had an author, she was telling me, so I do a show called Book Club Corner. It's a platform where I speak to authors, chat with authors about their books and so on. And I had an author, I was talking to her, asking her, well, where can we find a book? Because I have that conversation before we interview to make sure that during the interview, you can tell the public where to go and get your book. After you've wowed them with your awesome book, you need to tell them where to get it. And she said, well, nobody wants to take my book. They don't like local authors. And I said, oh gosh, poor thing. It's not that they don't like local authors, but I'll just give you some stories from bookstores. I've spoken to their consignment officers and stuff, and they're also a business, right? They have rent to pay, they have employees to pay, they have bills, they have utilities and loans to pay. And you walk into their store as an author, with your awesome book and you're feeling so special and you just walk in, where can I put my book? And they say, oh no, we don't have any space and we have enough of those kind of books, right? And you're like, they don't like local authors, but you didn't sell your book. That's one of the challenges we're dealing with. Authors who may not be selling, you think, the selling happens between the reader and your book, right? The space where you're selling your book, whether it's a digital platform or a bookstore, but the selling also happens when you have to go into a bookstore and tell them about your awesome book, right? And why should they want your book on the shelf? And then what's going to happen after the book is there, right? Are they going to have to pay an employee to come out every Saturday morning and with a feather duster and, dust off your book because it's just in a corner dying? Or is it that you're doing
capital on the
promotions and
shelf.
people coming in, asking about your book, right? Your book, Helyard, from Helyard, right? Right, Stuart? Are they coming in the bookstore and asking for your book, right? And that's one of the things you need to tell them. I've been featured in articles. I do interviews. I can send you my press kits. I can send you, my media stuff. And I am making sure people hear about my book. I have reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. People are buying the book and people want my book. There's a demand. And timeliness as well. So I have a client who has a book called Carnival is Me. That's Mr. Alvin Ruston. And his book, Carnival is Me, he came to Trinidad because he lives in Australia now. He came to Trinidad to launch his book around Carnival time. How smart do you have to be to pick,
seamless marketing.
It's Carnival is Me. Should I come Christmas time and launch that book? No.
What, Easter?
Right? You come Carnival time and launch that book. Yeah, so if you know you're doing a book that it may have certain themes in it, let us say it may have Easter themes in it. When do you go try to push that book? During the Easter season, right? You may have themes in it about different seasons. Goat racing is big in Tobago. Maybe it is a story surrounding somebody who wanted to be a champion goat racer. When do you want to push that book? You want to push that book during goat racing season, which is during the Easter here in Tobago, right? So I'm just putting it out there. You have to understand the market you're in. You have to time it right. It's your book. It's your project. Advocate for it. Don't let it wither on the vine. Don't let it just, in a corner crying out for help, full of dust in some, little bookstore, not doing anything. You go in there and have some kind of, read aloud something, do a promotion. And the next thing I want to make sure people understand before we close off is that your book can have book products, right? Your book can have book products. What is that? What is a book product? Bookmarks, mugs, aka merchandise. Bookmarks, mugs. If you have a book that is self-help or maybe a memoir, maybe you want to pair it with a journal. Maybe that journal might have an area in the back for you to write your thoughts, right? And what are you going to write with? Something. Maybe, you can have a branded writing implement, whether it's a pencil or a pen or whatever it is. You can have a coffee mug. Right? This is a book where you're saying, sit early in the morning and have a read, or at night. You might want to have a branded wine glass. You may want to have, whatever you think is relevant. You don't just want to push products at people, but it may be relevant, right? My client, Alvin, if he did pan sticks, now, he's into pan. He's a steel pan player. He's toured the world with, Cavaliers. If he came out with pan sticks, tell me if they wouldn't sell off.
And that's it.
So
aligned to his brand.
Yes, you have to figure out what products can I pair with my book. People are so into your books. You may be doing some craft. Maybe you're doing some beaded work. Your bookmarks may be a bead. Your hand, a little bracelet for your hand. I have an author. She's into that the butterfly as a symbol, metamorphosis, change, right? And she does handicraft with the butterfly. Now she can pair her handicraft with her books where she's talking about metamorphosis and talking about, butterflies and that whole animal in coming from the from this little cocoon to coming out to be a this beautiful creature. How can I metamorphosize into that? So you can figure out not just books but book products, because you're now an author, what I call an authorpreneur, right? Or an author incorporated. You're now an authorpreneur or an author incorporated. You now have a
Fantastic.
product to sell for the rest of your life to give revenue, and you can rework your book every 5 years. You can. When we were at school, they used to have a new edition every 5 years. What did they do? Change the cover of the book, right? Put an
Maybe a
and,
couple
take
words,
out a
right?
but, add a glossary or something like that.
Yeah.
And now they have the book going up in price. I mean, when you put the first edition, second edition, third edition next to each other, you're like, so why did we buy the third edition again? So that's just to say, if you have a book, you can every 5 years revamp it with a nice new updated cover. This kind
To
of way.
authors?
You can now, you could go to hardcover now. You could literally now say, listen, I have a series of books. I have 3 books that are, going on one into the other. Now I'm going to look at targeting book collectors. Now I'm going to start to do a hardcover that's a special edition for all 3 books, package it. So I'm just saying, there's so much that you can do with your book. Don't be challenged and don't stick in this one phase. It's one book I have to sell and that's it for you. How do I get people interested? Think out of the box, become
Expand.
that authorpreneur and that author incorporated.
Fantastic, Jewel.
Brilliantly said.
Expand your revenue streams, man.
But that is it. You have to look at multiple revenue streams as an author. And I'll say it again, an entrepreneur and an author, not much difference. You bring out something new, engage in the market, trying to generate revenue. So you have to look at your different revenue streams. What I am confused about with Jewel, all this knowledge you drop here tonight, how do you relax? Because there's a lot going on in that mind. There's so many different layers. Is there a favorite wine?
Yeah.
Tell us something about some of the products out of Tobago you enjoy while they're relaxing.
Well, let me tell you, this is for all the bibbers out there like myself, right? I love to support local. We have to understand our value. This is just a plug for our local industry, whatever it might be, whatever product it is. We have to appreciate ourselves and our industry. And I did a wine course, right? Because I always want to do something new. And I did a winemaking course, and so I can make wines and liqueurs. And when I was finished doing this course, I said, I love wines. I want to sell wines. Let me get into it. So I started a business. It's called Tobago Bootleggers Winery. And gone to the bank now to open a bank account for it, only to hear wines. What kind of wine does? You know how we talk. What kind of wine this? I say, well, it's fruit wines and stuff. They say, oh, you need a liquor license. So I go down by customs with my little self.
We talk about this
Customs
last
say,
week,
yeah, customs says to me, wine, fruit wine. No, we only know about grape wine. We don't have no category for your kind of wine. You can't get no license. So I'm like, okay. So I gone back to the bank. The bank was like, well, you're selling alcohol. So if you're selling alcohol, you cannot do it without a license. And if customs doesn't want to give you a license, we can't open an account for you. So I say all of that to say, when I came to that point when I realized, so we have a vibrant industry, creative people making all kind of concoction. There's somebody who have jalapeno wine, habanero wine, aloes wine, rice wine, what else we have? A fever grass wine I've had. And these creatives, because this is part of the orange economy, they're making these kind of collaborations with these different fruits and roots and flowers. These are coming out of their own minds. They make, they're like mad scientists. And
Right.
they can't progress with their business unless they do it under the table kind of thing. because now you can't export. If you don't have a license, how are you going to export? So now you have to depend on somebody come in or going to carry wine to your client, or maybe you could put it in TT Post. I don't know how that works exactly, unless your packaging is really, really good, because, you don't want your glass to break. But I'm saying that to say I push local wines like nobody's business, right? I do not go to the supermarket and buy any kind of grape wine. I don't have anything against it. I love grape wines. But when I realized, if we don't build up our local industries, and let me just give you all some background. Grape wines did not come into prominence without hard work and support from the winemakers in those territories. Grape wines wasn't no kind of special wine. Let me just tell you, right? When those people read in the Bible that Jesus turned water into wine, and it had wine, he used to serve at the beginning of the event and at the end of the event when people have drunk. Grape wine wasn't no kind of, it was just plain old fermented alcohol, just like the wine we're selling. But they put quite a bit of work into putting standards in place, creating, industry standards for producing the wines, naming the wines, where you could produce a wine. Champagnes can't come from anywhere. They have to come from Champagne.
Yep.
So, what are we doing to bolster our wine industry? Support your local wine. So that's what I do to relax. I support my local winemakers in Trinidad and Tobago.
You have a couple glasses.
I bib on my local stock, and if I make wine, I make liqueur, and I bib on that too. So I invite Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean, support your local wines. If you want to buy your red wines and your grape wines and your Sauvignon Blancs and your blushes and all of that, all right. But just remember, we have local winemakers right here in the Caribbean, and it's a good price. Sometimes the percentage alcohol is even higher. You're looking for a good head, buy the local wines. So that's my plug for my local winemakers.
So when in Tobago, go and look for Jewel. You'll get a 1 or 2 glass, a good conversation,
a good book.
You can't ask for more.
Jewel, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Riveting. You're a pioneer and a champion, and we encourage you to continuing on doing great things. Even right here on the Big Potato Podcast, you are our first woman on our show.
Oh, yeah.
So you're a pioneer here as well.
We're heading into International Women's Day. So
right
fantastic.
When we're heading into International Women's Day. So on that note, I want to bid all the ladies, all women, happy International Women's Day.
Use a deeper voice for that. Kendell.
Happy.
I want to thank all the ladies.
Women's Day.
Much better.
All the ladies.
I love it.
Thank you so much for being part of our show tonight, Jewel. I really thank you. And we'll be looking forward to our bottle of wine.
Of course.
Coming our way. I know you frequent Trinidad a lot as well. So we'll be looking for it. We know it, no problem with the transport of it down. So thanks so much for joining us, Jewel.
You're very welcome.
Mrs.
Thank you
Jewel.
for having me.
Anytime. It's our pleasure. Mrs. Jewel Greene-George. And folks, such a riveting interview, such a great program tonight on the Big Potato Podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for listening. Stuart, anything before we go?
Yeah, I just want to thank Jewel again. It was very informative. I know the listeners would have enjoyed this episode when it comes out. So, and again, it looks as though we're going to have to bring Jewel back for a second time, because when I look at my list of questions, there are a whole lot more still to be answered. So, yeah, have a great night, Jewel. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom with the listeners.
So, folks, be sure to share, subscribe, and follow, and like, and do all the good stuff on social media. As Jewel said, support your local entrepreneurs. We're doing social entrepreneurship as well. So support us by liking and sharing the podcast as far as possible. This is the Big Potato Podcast, and we're signing out for tonight. Entrepreneurship in the creative industry.
Entrepreneurship it's all game. The Big Potato Podcast is yours to claim. From startups to scaling up, we cover it all, so don't mess up. Monday nights, don't miss the show with Kendell and Stuart. Your time to grow, listen up, take notes and learn. The Big Potato Podcast, next gen's turn.